one thing, one business, one story, and one lesson to take away every week for small business owners looking to grow. I'm Hayley Baxter.
And I'm Phil Davenport. And today we have the absolute pleasure of talking with Sophie Baldwin. Sophie, I'd like to start if we may. So could you take us back to before you started your own business and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to what led to that kind of big bang moment where you decided to start your own business?
Sure. So my background really was around working as a PA. So I worked as a PA in London in investment banks, a few investment banks, and I then went off travelling for several years, travelled around, and when I came back from travelling, I was 7 months pregnant when I came back from travelling. Went away with my boyfriend, came back married with 2 months to go before I was about to give birth. And I was looking for something that was going to fit around me having a baby, ultimately. So I did a bit of PA work, supporting people, working around kind of organising events and that kind of thing. And then I got myself a part-time job with a guy who was a coach, and he went into really big corporations and mentored very senior members of staff and ran team events. And during that time, he said to me, I really want you to step up in your role. I want you to take on more. And I thought, I wonder what that could be. And there was an external bookkeeper that came into the office, and she noticed that I'd started playing around with the software that was on the system. And she said to me, would you like me to show you how to raise invoices? So I said, oh yes please. So she came in to show me some basics. And I said to her, how did you get into this? And she was a single mum with 4 children, running her own business. And I said to her, what qualifications did you get? And she said to me, I'm qualified through the Institute of Certified Bookkeepers, and this is what I do, and I have one person working for me. And I just felt so inspired by that. I thought, this is amazing. So I kind of went away and I thought to myself, yeah, I want to do this. I'm going to be a bookkeeper. So I then went back to my boss at the time and said to him, this is what I'd like to do, and would you help me with paying for getting qualified? And he very kindly said that he would do that. And my intention was then to kind of just work for him as doing the administration and being his bookkeeper. But during that time, there was quite a big recession that happened. Very quickly in that recession, big businesses cut their budgets, and so coaching and mentoring, suddenly that was a really big cut in the budget, and he had no work. So I was working for him, and he was really struggling, and it got to a point where I said to him, you're going to have to make me redundant because you can't actually afford to keep me on. At the time, I had an 18-month-old son, and my daughter was just about to start school. And I remember before my son was born, going on holiday with my parents, and we were in Spain. We were sitting on the beach having our lunch, and I said, my ambition is one day I'm going to run my own business. I'm going to have 2 members of staff, and that was like my goal. But I wasn't expecting to do it when I had really small children. I was thinking that's somewhere in the future. Anyway, suddenly I was redundant, and I was scrabbling around in the background trying to get all my qualifications and launched my business. I'd taken my 2 exams and I'd launched my business. I went to my first BNI networking event, and I didn't even know if I'd passed at that point. But I was like, there's no plan B, this has got to happen. And went along to that. That was really scary. Loads of guys all standing up, banging their chests about how great their businesses were. And I just thought, I just felt sick, to be honest with you. The one thing that really got me going on my journey of starting my own business was that when I told my mother-in-law about my plans for what I wanted to do, she said to me, I will lend you the money to get going. And that was a real surprise to me. that she was backing me. You know, she's like, I think you can do this, which was quite a big thing. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do it, get going and do this. The pressure of needing to pass those exams was good. I got distinctions in those.
Well done.
I think it was like, you got to pass it. And I then had these qualifications and thought, no, I don't know what to do. How to even get a client? So my husband, he builds websites and he's got a degree in marketing. He built me a website. He said, this is the name you're going to call your business. Here's your business card. Here's your business plan. And then he worked right in the centre of Brighton at the time. And he went door to door around all the businesses and said, my wife's a bookkeeper. Do you need a bookkeeper? And he came home and he said, I've got 2 leads for you. I've got 2 people that want a bookkeeper. But here's their number. And I was literally like, oh my gosh, like, what, I've got to ring them up. I was
Oh my
like, ring them, you know. So he actually got me my first 2 clients and got me going.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and then he had this, he was so sweet. I mean, he made like this poster which was pictures of like, because when we'd travelled, we'd gone to the first base camp of Everest, and there was a picture of me at the first base camp of Everest with him, and a couple of pictures with the children, and, you know, and put over it like, you can do it, you know, and then put it up on the wall in my tiny little box room office, you know, and that's how I got going, really. Ultimately, I needed a job that was going to fit round having really young children and that was going to earn me enough money. That's why I started it.
There's so many things in everything you've just said, Sophie. I don't know where to start, really. I think that what's really quite amazing about your story is how much support you had from everybody around you to get going, because it's quite a brave thing to start your own business. Sometimes I think there can be a bit of hesitancy, particularly when you've got a young family and things like that. But so many, particularly in our industry, so many bookkeepers and accountants go into that road, make that move into it, because it is something that you can most definitely fit around family life. After you got your first 2 clients, then I'm guessing you made the phone calls and it went well and it went from there. What's something that you would look back on that first year in business and something that you felt you did really right?
All I remember about the first year in business is I felt sick for the whole year. I think what happened was I remember going to the first, it was the ICB, they'd have their annual conference, and I went along to that, and that was when I just started out. And what made quite a first step for me having people helping me was, I remember going along to that and again feeling really nervous and standing outside the building in London, and at the time I had these really kind of colourful shoes that people would stop me wherever I went and said, oh, I love your shoes. I was standing outside feeling worried about going into this building not knowing anybody, and this girl said to me, oh, I love your shoes, and she was another bookkeeper. And she happened to be like from Sussex as well, a lovely lady called Shirley. And so we went in there together and kind of stuck together, and she was my first subcontractor.
Okay, that's really interesting.
So I think the way I've always grown my business, and I'm not saying this is the correct way to do it, is I've always said yes to everything.
I love that.
If someone says, if you've got capacity, and I say, yeah, you know, and then if I haven't, I'm like, you know, peddling around in the background, like, right, I need to find someone that's going to help me with this. So, yeah.
I think that is it's a really good thing, because I do think that having that, I don't know what the right word is to describe it, but having that little bit inside you that's like that really serves you well when running a business, because otherwise you just, I think, become a little bit paralysed almost by the fear of it if you actually stop and think about things. So I think that is a really good thing to have. So just thinking about, so you mentioned that Shirley there became your first subcontractor. So that's like the start of building a team, isn't it? Talk to us a little bit around, because you've got quite a big team now, Am I right in that? I think you've got quite a big team.
Yeah, I think there's 7 of us now. It's reduced. It's reduced recently. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit around the steps of, you had a subcontractor first and then taken on your first employee and that journey.
God, my first employee, bless her, she's still with me.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, she's been with me for over 12 years now. And I met her when I was working for that guy, the coaching guy. He rented an office that was an accountant's. So I used to have to walk through the reception at the accountant's office to go to work. And I met her there. And she was a bookkeeper at the accountant's. And one day I saw her in the local shop and told her I'd started my own business. And then she contacted me and said, I wonder whether you've got any work for me. And at the time, we would work in my converted garage at the end of the garden. And I remember feeling really nervous at the idea of, could I commit to being able to afford to pay her for 5 hours a week? I was really nervous.
Yeah.
£8 an hour.
It becomes a big thing though when you've got then to start taking responsibility for somebody else.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. It's like, can I commit to this? Can I really afford it? But I just thought I'm just gonna give it a go, which is probably the way I do most things. I think just give it a go. If it works out, it works out. Yeah, and she's still with me, and she's not on £8 an hour, by the way, anymore.
£8.50.
She does 30 hours a week, and she's been with me for years, you know.
How did you balance the attitude of I'm going to say yes and I'm going to dive into everything, and at the same time, I know from my industry, thinking about your margins and your costs and your time investment towards things, have you found that you've had a lot of kind of bounce back off it? Or have you found that there's been huge success, or has there been a mixture of the two?
When I first started out, everything was extremely lean and I kept my overheads super low. And it surprised me actually that I remember there was one guy I was working for and he had this big turnover, but he had huge outgoings. And I was making more money than him because my profit, because I didn't have all the overheads. Over the years, year on year, apart from the one COVID year, my turnover has increased every single year.
And have you managed to keep your margins with that turnover, or have you been conscious of it, or has it just naturally happened that success has just kind of come to you, so to speak?
I would say it's actually harder for the margins. The margins get reduced the bigger you get. Is what I find, because you've got all your staff costs and everything that goes all around that. So there's a lot more to think about, and when you've got staff, there's you've got to look after them ultimately.
Yeah.
And that costs money.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point, because I think that curve of going on a business journey is something that definitely isn't spoken about. But when you go from just being a solo person on your own running a business, particularly I think in our industry, I don't know if it applies everywhere, but definitely you start solo, you're on your own, you make good money, you can make good money fairly quickly, I think. But when you take that next step and you begin to grow a team, definitely your profit levels and your margins take a dip.
Yeah,
and I think it's
true.
You go to a certain point, once you go on that journey, you have to get to a certain size, I suppose, before it starts coming back. And I think a lot of businesses are in that kind of, between taking on employee number 1 and probably employee number 10, that pain journey, it's not pain journey, probably is a little bit, but that journey is until you get to that point where you're big enough that it does start coming back and you can start getting a grip on all of those efficiencies and things like that. I don't think many people realise that that's kind of the journey that you do go on naturally as you start building a team.
Yeah, I mean, also there's a big realisation for me was that there became a point where it's like I'm I'm actually running a proper business here now. Because I'm remote, we gave up the office. We had an office for a bit, we gave that up in COVID. And, there's a completely different mindset between being, a sole trader and a business owner.
Yep.
If you say self-employed or a business owner, it's actually two really different things. It's two different mindsets. And
Yep.
working in my kitchen, on a kitchen table, it was really easy for me to forget I've actually got a whole team of people here and I've got a proper business and I need to act like a business owner because I'm not. So I've invested in myself, to be able to kind of learn how to be a business owner, because it's a massive shift between working on your own or maybe having someone subcontracting helping you out to suddenly you've got a team of people who are all expecting to be looked after in a good way, and processes need clients, and it's so different. It's so different, and it took me quite a while to realise that I really needed to change myself to be able to push the business forward.
I think that's a lovely point. I think it's so tricky to change from, and maybe the word engineer is incorrect, but to go from engineer to business owner, from being the big brains of the operation and the person who's going to get it done, and don't worry if it's late, I'll crack on and I'll work till midnight tonight, to transition into saying, I've got a great team, I'm going to delegate, I'm going to put systems in place, and I'm going to know that if things are incorrect, I need to review them, and I need to look from a systemization perspective, why is the business not functioned as I expected it to function, as opposed to an engineer where you say, oh crap, there's a problem, right, I'll just fix it. Nobody can do it like I can. How did you go on that journey when you talk about self-improvement? Did you seek help from others? Did you read books?
Well, I got to a point where it was probably about 2 years ago actually. I was really burnt out from running the business, and was working 7 days a week. Job was just people complaining. I had clients.
It was a job.
Yeah.
Your business was a job. Yeah.
So I had clients complaining and I had staff complaining, and I remember my daughter saying to me, she's like, Mum, you've got to make a change. This is no kind of a life that you're living, is what she said. Something's got to change. And I just thought, I've got to get out of here, and I'd said so many times to my husband, like, if I could leave, then I would, but I can't because it's my own business. I'd have left ages ago. And I just felt like I'd created an absolute monster and I was being controlled by it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, my only option is I need to sell my business. I've got to leave now. So I started that process of that, and met with several people and got an offer for my business, which was quite good. And the guy was going to take us all on as a team. I was going to retain my job, and the contracts were out and all of that, and then I got cold feet about the idea of it. It was really weird. I didn't think I cared, but then at that moment of him like talking about what my job title was going to be and all this kind of thing, I started thinking, I'm not sure how I feel about this actually. This guy's going to be my boss, I'm not sure about the idea of anyone being my boss, actually. So I had a bit of a panic, pulled out. My team had all been told that we were being bought out, and then I had to announce to them all that I changed my mind. So I said, instead, we're going to grow the business, because I just thought, all I knew was something's got to be different here, because I'm so unhappy. This isn't working. And I thought it meant I had to leave, but actually it just means I need to change it.
Yeah.
So I got in a business coach. That was my first thing. Someone said, oh, there's this lady, I heard she's quite good. And she came in and she spent like 8 hours with me, basically like going through all the woes of how much I hated it, and wrote me up this report, you don't charge enough money, why aren't you going networking, all these kind of things. You need to do this, you need to do that. And then off the back of that, I started looking at websites of other businesses that did the same thing as me. thinking, what do they do? What does their website look like? How much are they charging? What are they saying? Like, I hadn't even been doing any of that. And I looked at one, and right at the bottom of it, there was this link, and it said six-figure bookkeeper. I thought, what's that? So I clicked into it and ended up finding all these podcasts on Spotify, which were industry, specific. And I remember that was at the Easter holidays, and I literally just listened to tons of them, and I was like, this is like amazing. Like, who are these people? All these things, these ideas, all these systems, I hadn't had time to even look up of what's even kind of out there. So I put in a call to speak to one of the owners of that business, Jo Wood, and she had run a business just like mine and sold it, and seemed to really understand where I was coming from. So I signed up and went into their success program, which was ultimately a live week by week course of learning how to be a business owner, talking about all these things. There was a workbook and all this kind of stuff, and I had access to this whole community of bookkeepers, about 160 bookkeepers and accountants, and Hayley was in there, and all talking about things in a private Facebook group, talking about the latest technology, all these kind of things, and I just found it really inspiring. That was the beginning of my journey of change. Before I started that, there's that famous book, The E-Myth.
Yeah.
I took that on holiday with me, right, before. I read that, and it made me feel so anxious because it described my business, that first part, about what a nightmare it was. And I remember getting to the point in the book when it said, and this is what you need to do to change. And I thought, and I just shut the book. I thought, I can't do that. It's too much. And I was like, I'm never reading that book again. It's like, it made me feel so anxious because it's like, it's just describing my life of what a nightmare it was, And then kind of from there, I ended up in the mastermind group, which is this amazing group. There's a small group of us, all supporting each other, all in the same industry, all sharing information. Nobody's, everyone wants to help each other and support, and that's just been amazing. That's the first time I've ever allowed myself to invest in myself, because I didn't think that would be okay to do that.
I absolutely love and resonate 100% with your story. So it is kind of a journey. We start off, we want to be a business owner because we want to run our own thing, we can improve, we can add value, etc. We don't work out our margins early on, and we base our price on sticking the old finger in the air. Then things don't go as well as we hope, so we think, okay, if I just bring in more business, and of course more business means we've got more headaches, so we bring in more staff, and now we need more business for the more staff, and we go through this loop, and then we've built this entity that's actually a prison, and we're stuck inside it, and we're thinking,
yes,
I'm meant to be the business owner. And I think the other thing that really resonated with me was we then read the E-Myth, and we read the flipping 7 successful habits of an individual, and we read these tons and tons of books. But to put them into practice, we don't realise we've got this head junk and these blocks in our own mind. And it's only when you join a peer group and you speak to other people who say, yeah, I did increase prices by 10%, or yeah, I did, what we did was we added extra value to our customers by doing this, and it allowed us to change the business model. And you suddenly go, wow, actually, I've been sat here struggling on my own, thinking that nobody can help. And this is probably just me now. All of the coaches and all the peer groups are just Schultzers who are trying to take my precious money that I'm flipping peddling for all the time to bring in anyway. And all of a sudden you unlock this next level. I mean, what were your thoughts there, Hayley?
I think it is. I think a lot of people will resonate with that journey, because I think it's so easy to create that monster business as you've described. It's easier, and I don't know why it's easier to do that, but it's almost easier to do that than to create this business that is a business. And you talked about that, Sophie, about the mindset between being self-employed and working for yourself to actually being a business owner. And running that business as a business owner is a different mindset, and it's a different way of thinking. And I think that when people start businesses, that's not an obvious thing to really know. And I think sitting here now, looking back, it feels like it should be a very obvious thing, but I actually don't think it is when you first started. So tell us a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like now.
It's all meetings.
And podcasts now as well, Sophie.
Literally, like, my diary is just full of meetings all day, and there'll be, like, meetings with new potential clients, meetings with actual clients, looking at software demos, meeting with staff, team members. I've got one of my team she's in a management role now, so spending time with her, working through things, spending a lot of time trying to build in processes. Yeah, just being bombarded with about a million messages, really.
I think it is. I think the reality of that is, like many other business owners, I think having those different hats of being the sales generator, the lead seller, the key manager, and managing everything, the one that's implementing the processes. I think, again, that's something that will resonate with a lot of people. And I think something that's important to remember on a business journey is it's never ending. You're always evolving, and there's always things to work on and things that you want to do. I think that as myself, there's always like, oh, wouldn't it be good if we could do this with it, or wouldn't it be good if we could introduce this, I don't know, service? How do we do that? How do we do the next thing? Is there anything in your business at the moment that you'd like to an area of focus that you'd like to improve on?
Well, the two things really that this year we're trying to focus on is improving our processes, because there weren't any processes before.
Or you were the process, Sophie.
It was like, yeah, there's processes now in place, and also focusing on the client experience. That's really important to us, that clients get a good that are looked after consistently, no matter who no matter who they deal with. So it's looking for consistency across the business. That is bringing the team together, making sure that everyone's all on the same page. I think when you have a team who are all remote, it can be that people kind of go off on a tangent because everyone's separate. So it's kind of working on how we bring the team together, better communication. They're the things.
And what practical tips would you offer to other business owners, especially with that being remote business? I know that when we're all remote, we do what we call a 10-minute takeover. So we set aside 10 minutes every morning, regardless of how busy or not it is, and we just have a check-in and say, what's everybody working on? What's everybody's thoughts? Any issues? And to be fair, it starts to come down to like a 4-minute chat. But how did you manage that, and what tips would you offer to others for that?
We did try that, but I dropped it because I felt it was just too much chattery. I started looking how much it was costing, and I was like, so what we've switched to is, so we have once a month we have a meet-up where we all go to the coffee shop together, and you can't talk about work, and then we all work together for the day. But every week we have a client meeting now where we run through a list of all the clients, and everybody's there together, talking about any issues or any problems or anything that's going on, so that we are all aware of each other's workloads. If there's any problems, to probably move away from people maybe feeling like they've got a heavy mental load, with responsibility. I mean, we use Teams, we all message on each other on there all the time, and then we've got like a team chat one where sometimes it'd be like, what are you having for lunch today, and just those kind of things. But I don't think I get it right all the time, but I think what we do is, we ask for feedback. We are really open. I welcome people to give feedback, or what's your idea, what do you think is going to work better. Like, we had a team day last year and we talked about that, what's going to bring the team closer together. Meetups, went for a dog walk together and walked to the pub, and things like that, just trying to make everybody feel like they're part of something rather than they're at home on their own working alone.
I love it. And I suppose, I don't know if this fits into the neurodivergent point that we were talking about before the podcast, but I know that I'm very similar to you now in that I've time blocked purposefully every piece of my day that I can do into a task, a meeting, a catch up, something, so that I've not got this open sprawl. How do you deal with that piece, and how do you deal with your calendar, and how do you deal with that from a neurodivergent perspective? I just see you smiling already.
Sorry about my dog. I'm laughing because at the beginning of the year, I had it all colour-coded and time-blocked of like what was marketing, what was sales, what was, all this, I was like, this is amazing. But it's all gone a bit wrong. Yeah, I mean, I use an AI tool to help me with my my inbox, because that gets completely out of control.
What is that? Sorry, I'd love to know.
That's called Fixer.
Okay.
And what that does is that helps to organise my emails coming in into different, like this one you need to respond to, this one's marketing / junk, notifications, all of those kind of things. So that helps me to kind of get a bit more organised in that way. Diary is hard. It's really hard with a diary, because you do have to be quite strict about what you're going to allow to happen. And I think my improvement, what would improve that is I need to get out of the weeds of actually being in the business, because I get pulled back in all the time, and that's something that I need to work on, of do I actually need to be involved in this?
And there's probably a little bit of a control thing there as well, isn't there? I sometimes think, because I find myself being pulled into things and getting involved with things, and then try to step away from it, because I think, well, no, the team can deal with it. That's why I've got them. That's why I'm very encouraging that all of the team deal with all of our clients, because I don't want to ever be a bottleneck in the business. And I think I have worked with accountants and bookkeepers elsewhere where they're very protective of it, but I think that just leads back to the monster business. How have you gone on that journey of letting go a little bit and relinquishing the control?
Yeah, I mean, I've had to. I mean, I've got 56 clients now. I can't look after them all, so I've had to do that, because actually what happens is I am the bottleneck, and most of the time the team are doing a great job, and then they say to me, oh, I still do the payments, can you make this payment? And then they'll go, have you done it? I'll be like, oh, I forgot, because I'm being distracted all the time by lots of other things. So the more that you can allow other people to step into a role and take on something for you, the better. I think my big mistake was that I never really had a plan when I started my business, and if I'd had a plan, then I would have known where I was going. So I've had to do a lot of backtracking and what I call infilling, going back into kind of putting the infrastructure of the business in that should have been there ages ago. Because I suppose the best way I could describe it to you before I started doing all this kind of work was that, like if you imagine you've got the sunflower goes up, it's got a really heavy head and a flipping bent over because it's got no support. That's basically what it's like, And so I've built the infrastructure 10 years late, ultimately, to be able to put processes in place and to enable other people to be able to do things to move me out. And they're always saying to me, like, you've got to hand over some of this stuff, So I do try really hard, but I do get dragged back in more than probably is needed. It's a journey, isn't it?
I love it. I mean, one of the great pieces of advice that I got in regards to that was take a 2-week holiday. And just if you're worried about the business falling over, you're worried about delegation, etc., just say to your staff, please don't call me unless it's an absolute emergency, and take a 2-week holiday. And I took a 3-week holiday to get married, and I received one phone call, and I had a real existential crisis when I got back as to what actually is my job. What do I do in the business? If they didn't need me for 3 weeks, what actually, because before that I was super busy and I was dipping into this and needed for that, and there was technical fix here and I needed to solve this problem, and all of a sudden I just kind of sat there twiddling my thumbs thinking, God, should I be made redundant? Am I the problem? And of course, 90% of the time it is, isn't it?
I know. I'm going to go on holiday quite soon, and what I am thinking I'm going to do, because it's only for a week, but I have the whole time from my business I've never ever gone without my laptop or phone, and I'm thinking I might actually leave my phone behind, which would be quite a major situation. If something went wrong, I wouldn't know, would I?
No, but that's a good thing, really, because most of the time things do get sorted. Well, they do get sorted, not most of the time. Things do get sorted out. I also think all as it does is I know that we know each other a little bit, don't we, Sophie? I know that it would just play on your mind for the whole, you can't then get away from it out of your head, even if it's all sorted out. So, and I think the truth is we all need time just to switch off. And actually you come back, I think that's where the most change happens sometimes, when you have that time away and that time where you're not just constantly in it or on it or being alerted to it. Your brain has time to think about things that you wouldn't otherwise come to you.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is the key bit. So this is our podcast is called What One Thing, even though there's been so many things that are going to be so useful to so many people already said. We talk about 3 kind of areas that you can change your business, so you can have growth, you can drive more revenue, you can cut your costs, or you can improve efficiencies. What's the one thing that you would share with everybody to really help them on their business journey?
It's growth. And what I mean by that is personal growth. Get people around you that can help you and support you and advise you, because having the support, it just makes such a massive difference. It really, really does, because it gives you the tools and confidence to do things that maybe you don't believe that you can do. I mean, have had and still continue to have massive imposter syndrome in most of the things. But the interesting thing has been being in our support group is that when you're on the mountain, you're only looking up at how far there is to go, and you have got no kind of perspective of how far you've even come. And being in our support group has made me realise that it's like, oh, I'm actually doing okay.
You're doing marvellously.
Never seen that, never noticed it, never acknowledged it, because all I see is what there is to do. So just get the right people around you, and don't see it as an expense to invest in yourself, with coaching and mentoring, because I think it's really essential. And I've only just realised that myself, so that would be my advice.
I think what's really phenomenally interesting is that was pretty much the same as when Hayley and myself spoke, and when we spoke to other business owners. And maybe one of the things about us doing this podcast shows that we've now come out that journey where we've actually got a bit of time to work on the business, and it's amazing how many people's step just before that was, I joined a peer group, I took on a coach, I took on a mentor, and for me this is 100% the truth, I pushed my ego aside and admitted, do you know what, things aren't going as well as I was hoping they would be doing. I started a business because I was like, this business is crap, I can do this better. And actually, I'm at a point where I'm questioning, was that the right move? And like you say, when you can get rid of that junk inside your own head, there's so much progress you can make. I mean, The one thing that I'd say, and we always put in a little shameless plug, could you tell us who is your ideal client and how would they get in touch with you?
Well, my niche is supporting entrepreneurs who are neurodivergent. I have some things on my website about that, and we love to. That's through personal experience of my daughter being diagnosed with ADHD, and then later realising that actually my whole household is neurodivergent, and seeing the struggles that can come with that on occasions. So we just love to support business owners with that. We've got our website, digitbookkeeping.co.uk, and my number's on there, and that's how you can get hold of us. Basically, just give us a call and we'll have a chat.
So Phil, what was your one takeaway from the chat that we've just had with Sophie?
I think the biggest lesson that Sophie taught us is that growth is not always progress. You know, it's one thing to say yes and to grow and to grow and to grow, but actually if you haven't got that structure in place, if you haven't worked out your margins and your numbers and your figures, you're growing an ever increasing headache and stress where you're the only real piece that's holding it together, and sooner or later, you know, that has to give, doesn't it? There can't be continual stress and pressure, even with the positives, with the money income and things like that. You know, and I think Sophie did a fantastic job of kind of talking about that and being very honest and open about her experience, and also how much the peer groups and getting a coach and realising that she had an issue to solve, and that issue was herself and her own growth. That was a huge takeaway for me. How about yourself?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Sophie's journey was really quite fascinating, even from how she started, and you know, she had a great amount of support at the beginning. Given I'm not a very keen marketer, to have a husband that can do all that for you is absolutely amazing. But I think that the biggest takeaway I think that I took from it, and although she didn't directly say this, I think that it's actually can be quite a lonely journey, and you're trying so hard to do everything that you can, one, to support your own family and your own lifestyle, but also to support that of your teams, and that's a huge responsibility, and it can most definitely be a lonely journey. And I think the other takeaway from it that I took is that realization that, you know, just because you've been running a business a certain way for 10 years or however long, you can still make the changes. You know, just because you perhaps feel like at that point you should have it all in the bag and know what you're doing, it's actually just about continually learning. And how amazing is it for somebody to have built a business like that and then recognise that it's not the way that it should be, instead of, and absolutely, if Sophie had sold a business and walked away from it all, that's fantastic. But actually to feel like, you know what, no, that's not right for me, and I want to go back and make this an even better business and work through all those challenges and problems. I think that's an amazing takeaway as well. Was there anything that was said that really resonated with you personally?
God, what a great question. I think all of it resonated, is the honest truth. I think our business is much smaller than Sophie's, but I went through exactly the same struggles, hit the same kind of wall that she hit. I too considered at one point, is this the point where I sell up and say that maybe this business life isn't for me? Maybe I've pushed as hard as I can push, and this isn't the lifestyle that I wanted to create. To found a peer group, found compatriots who are not just cheerleading you, but are holding you accountable and are helping you to get rid of a lot of the head trash, and have now moved forward and I'm really enjoying the business journey. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think something in what you've just said, I think, is really important, and that's what people forget, is it is about enjoying the business journey. That's really, really important. If it's not enjoyment, I'm not saying easy, and I'm not saying that you have to enjoy every minute of every day, But I think if you're on this journey and there's not that enjoyment there, or that, I don't really know how to describe it, but that kind of, I don't know whether it's passion or like a bit of fire in your belly to really want to make it work, I definitely think that is a red flag or a warning sign. In terms of what resonated with me from Sophie, definitely the bit where she talks about networking and dreading it. Absolutely. I totally remember that feeling. But as you do in life, it's something that I've learned to, I'm not going to say love, because that wouldn't be true, but I think I've learned that it's a necessary part of the journey. And actually, without doing that, I think there are so many connections and things that you wouldn't make along the way. So I think that is something that's really quite important.
I think if you can see the end goal, you know, if you're getting ready for the beach next summer and you're hitting the gym every day and you're working on your tan or whatever, there's an end goal and you don't mind going to the gym because there's progress. But if you turn up to the gym every day and feel like you're working your backside off, and you look at the flipping mirror in 6 months' time and you look exactly the same and you don't see the progress, I think that's identical to working in business. And you're thinking, why the hell do I come to the gym and train so hard if my results aren't there? And I know that it's very cliche to say everything's the same, but I really see those journeys the same way.
Yeah, no, I definitely am in agreement with you.
Cool. Well, let's wrap it up there then. I mean, that was this week's What One Thing. I'm really grateful to everybody that joined us. If you have enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends, share it with colleagues, share it with people that you think it might resonate with. And I really hope that you've got one thing for your own business that you can push forward with and really make a transformation.